Bun găsit! Războiul Rusiei împotriva Ucrainei a intrat în cea de-a 98-a zi. Drama poporului ucrainean continuă, iar agresorul nu dă semne că se va opri. Efectele conflictului sunt deja globale. Criza energetică, criza alimentară și cea economică sunt deja resimțite la nivel mondial. Astăzi vom discuta despre posibilele soluții pe care România le are la îndemână pentru a-și asigura independența energetică. Energia nucleară. Iată sumarul ediției. România ar putea deveni prima țară din lume care obține energie nucleară cu reactoare modulare mici. Prima centrală va fi instalată la Doicești, Dâmbovița, și ar putea fi operațională în 2028. Tehnologia a fost dezvoltată de compania americană NuScale și ar permite înlocuirea termocentralelor dezafectate. România ar putea deveni și un centru de producție și pregătire. Aceasta ar putea reprezenta una din soluțiile pe termen mediu pentru independența energetică a României. Urmăriți un interviu care ne-a fost oferit în exclusivitate. Mr. Friedman, thank you for accepting this interview.
Well, thank you so much for having me.
The first small modular reactor in Romania will be developed on the site of a former Doicești power plant in Dâmbovița County. You are a diplomat, so we will not discuss detailed technical and financial aspects, but we will refer to the general ones. Why this place, Doicești?
The first and best people to answer that would be the people of SNN, who made that decision based on a study that was done, funded by the United States government through our TDA, Trade Development Agency. That study was designed to give professional, objective, expert views about the issues that were laid out and help them make a decision about where to put the initial small modular reactor. When I look at the problem of where do you put these, I see it not as a problem, but as an opportunity. And for me, in a region, and I've never been there yet, so I would love to come visit soon, but a region that has an existing or recently decommissioned coal power plant is the perfect place to put an SMR. Why? Because number one, you have people who know how to operate a power plant. And coal power plant skills are very transferable to a nuclear power plant. Number two, you have the grid interconnection, which means that the cost of establishing a new electric plant is reduced because you're already connected to the grid. Number three, you have water supply and other supplies already in place, which means that the cost will be very good. And number four, you have a community that I hope will be ready to accept this as a job opportunity for community stability and for community prosperity.
Does the community need to approve this kind of technology?
Absolutely. I think that any major business investment should have the input from the community. We all know that nuclear power has a history. Most of it good, some of it not so good. And so it's very important that the community understand what the project is, that they have an input and a voice into how the project will work in their community, and have a chance to express any concerns and get real, accurate information to help allay any fears that might be lingering about a project like this.
When it will be operational?
That's a good question, and I'm only going to give you an approximate answer. The reason it's approximate is that it depends on some other work that has to be done. I know the objective, as laid out by President Iohannis and by SNN and by NuScale, the American company that will be building the plant, is to have it operational about the 2028 timeframe. But of course, some more work has to be done about the site, making sure that the characteristics of the ground are appropriate, that all the engineering work that has to be done to dig the place where the reactor will be sited. All that work has its own set of variables, but I think 2028 is a reasonable expectation for the first power to start emerging from that plant.
How much power it will provide this facility?
The nameplate capacity on this particular project, it's 6 modular reactors working together in a series. and its capacity is 462 megawatts. So that's about the same size as a typical coal plant.
And it will cost how much?
Again, the company should be the one that answers that. You know, there are some costs that are very predictable, and I'm going to quote John Hopkins, who just said the same thing to members of Parliament that we met with this morning. About 1/3 of the cost is the nuclear equipment, the modules that go into that. And those are assembled in a factory. The company has already lined up contracts and is already starting to build a lot of these components. And so they can predict about 1/3 of the cost with high degree of accuracy. The other 2/3 are civil works that are done here in Romania. Site preparation, cement, steel, you name it, all those other works. And those, the costs there, they need to do more work, they need to do more study and more analysis, and see the productivity of labor here, the cost of labor here, because that is an important component. We often get hung up on the cost and thinking about, oh, that money's going out the door to some foreign company. Well, no. 2/3 of the expenditures are going to be spent in Romania, hiring mostly Romanian companies and Romanian workers to build this plant.
Why is this technology so special? It exists for 50 years, but just now, recently, United States approved it. EU, not yet.
Mm-hmm. So you're absolutely right. This classic design of a boiling water reactor has been around for about 60 years, and it's proven itself safe and effective over time. What has emerged is that in the past, there were accidents, and we should not run away from that fact. The boiling water is a very different design from places like Chernobyl, which is all on everybody's mind. But this design takes into account all the things, all the lessons that we've learned over these past 60 years of operation and incorporated new safety features. You know, one of the most interesting things for me, and I'm not an engineer, I'm not a physicist, but the interesting thing for me is that the past accidents have happened because pumps have failed. Well, this system doesn't have pumps. It uses the natural circulation of water. Hot water rises, cool water falls to circulate through the plant. So if there were a condition where the plant had to be shut down and the operators had to walk away from the site, the plant is contained, it's shielded, and there would be no radiation leakage, and the plant itself would self-cool, self-shut down with no danger to the outside world. The second piece that's new is these are small modular reactors, SMRs. That's the term of the art. And instead of one giant reactor with a giant core of nuclear fuel, they have multiple small reactors. So if there's a problem, and you know this is real world, if there's a problem in one module, it won't affect the other modules in the plant. And that means that the risk of something happening are much lower in general, and the consequences of anything happening are much lower. And that's why when the United States spent 42 months studying the design, testing the design, and then ultimately approving and licensing the design, that is, our independent Nuclear Regulatory Commission approved the design, they tested all these scenarios and they said, okay, if in the past the classic nuclear reactor needs 20-kilometer exclusion zone, this one needs a couple of hectares. So you can put these small modular reactors conveniently in the site of a coal plant, but very interestingly, and I think the opportunity, is you can put a small reactor, 1, 2, 3, depending on the size of a town, to replace the district heating elements. So instead of burning coal to heat your homes in winter, you can use a nuclear reactor, and then during the summer when you don't need the heat, you can use that same reactor to generate electricity and to generate hydrogen in a clean fashion. So the opportunities are immense and amazing, and it's a wonderful opportunity that Romania will be the country that gets to prove how effective these will be.
But Romania needs EU approval for that kind of technology, right?
So the approval process is a two-step process. There is the technology approval and then the site approval. Romania, it controls the process in both cases because you have your own regulator, you have your own environmental agencies, and they control the process. On the technology piece, there are some EU requirements that need to be filled, and Romanian regulators are already working very closely with their EU counterparts to coordinate this. But it will be Romania that gets to decide if it wants to approve this technology.
And this Doicești reactor can be the first in the world?
The way the process will be, so the first reactor has already been purchased by a consortium called UAMPS. It's a Utah Association of Utilities, municipal utilities. And so they've already started work on the site preparation, and they've already ordered the first modules for this reactor. Their timing is that they need the power from it in about 2028, 2029. So in tandem with the Romania project, the American project will be built. And so it's possible that the switch will be thrown first here in Romania, and Romania gets the badge of honor of being the first, but there will be a partner all along the way in the development of this project.
As you probably know, we are dealing with conspiracy theories here and fake news in this show. The conspiracy theory believers could say, okay, the Americans are not having a single unit in US yet, because they want to see what will happen if everything works properly. They don't want to take risks at home. They choose Romania because they know that we obey their orders. What would you tell them?
I would tell them, number one, the challenge with fake news and this kind of story is that there are half a sentence of truth coupled with 2 and 3, 4 sentences of fantasy. And so the key thing to think about here is that, number one, what I just said, that this project will be developed in tandem with an American project. So it's not like we're taking a risk or an experiment on the Romanian people. We're already doing it ourselves. Number two, the company has already built a model of the reactor and tested every single component, not just in the United States, but at facilities in Italy and other countries. So this is an internationally developed, internationally approved project. And why Romania? Well, Romania has a wonderful safety record of operating its own reactor at Cernavodă. I had the pleasure and the honor to visit it just this past Sunday, and I saw how dedicated the Romanian workers there are to safety, security, and protecting their community while providing the best, and I say the best in the world, product and production record for electricity. So Romania has something to be proud of, which is your skill as a country in operating a nuclear reactor. And it is that combination of the desire to be a regional leader and the proven technical capability of the Romanian people and the Romanian industry that makes this an attractive place to be the first. So I wouldn't say this is Americans are testing something. I would say, wow, we get to be the first because we're good and we can make this work. And that's, I'm sure, what drove Nuclear Electrica and NuScale together into this project.
I'm saying this because you know all the narratives about the American laboratories in Ukraine. You know that stories. They are quite popular here in Romania also. Do you expect any similar narratives regarding these nuclear plants?
I expect that people who oppose projects like this and countries that seek to sow division in the world will, of course, attempt to create problems, create friction about these projects. I have, as you mentioned, I'm a diplomat, and I've been doing this business for 27 years. My first assignment was to Ukraine. And the story today about Ukrainian laboratories, well, this is a point of pride and honor for us and for the Ukrainian people, because 30 years ago, the United States government, in partnership with Ukraine, but also in partnership with Russia and Kazakhstan and other former Soviet countries, said, wow, the Soviet Union was busy creating these biological weapon labs, these chemical labs, these nuclear facilities, and all these scientists and all this technical talent can be diverted by nasty, evil people for evil purposes. So let's work together, the United States, Russia, Ukraine, other countries to protect the technology, to build up to international standards the protections of these laboratories, and to make sure that the research is done transparently, openly, and in the interest of the general public. And that's what has happened for these past 30 years. And so for now, a country like Russia, and I will name the name here, Russia puts out false, lying stories because they want to sow division. But the fact is, these laboratories have been protected in agreement with Russia for these 30 years. So yes, to answer your question more directly, yes, I do expect false stories to emerge. Romania has experienced this directly with the shale gas issues about, 7 years ago?
Yeah.
I'm more familiar with Bulgaria, where I was last assigned as a diplomat, where a combination of false stories about fracking and shale gas were put out that destroyed the opportunity to have a project on the southern side of the Danube. And I would assume that on the northern side in Romania, the same thing happened, where these stories were put out to create tension and to make it commercially impossible to do these deals. And why? We're seeing the reason today, right now, just north of us in Ukraine. Russia created dependencies in natural gas, in oil, in order to wield political influence and power over its partners, business partners. And the result of that is they are now trying to scare countries. Again, as I mentioned, Bulgaria is near and dear to my heart because I was there just up until last year. They cut off the supply of gas to Bulgaria and to Poland because they wanted to threaten those countries. So I expect the same behavior here. And I think we need to be ready for it, and we can fight back.
US Exim Bank has opened a $7 billion credit line for these projects. The same conspiracy theory believers could say it's just a business for the Americans. As war in Ukraine is a business too. They sell weapons and now they will sell nuclear technology.
Again, this is one of those ideas that has the half sentence of truth. Yes, of course nuclear power is a business. Yes, Romanians will get great jobs from it. Romanian companies will prosper as they supply services to this industry. Romanian people will get carbon-free energy. So yes, those are all businesses. And yes, American companies that have spent billions of dollars developing the technology will gain the exports of this technology. But the net effect is we all do better. That is the story. It's not about somehow manipulating or influencing people. It's about win-win from investing in each other and investing in trade. And that reminds me of something that I probably should have started our whole conversation off with, which is we are celebrating this year 25 years of strategic partnership with Romania. And that partnership is important to us because we both gain from it. We gain from it as allies in times of trouble, as we are now with Russia's unprovoked and unjustified war in Ukraine. We're providing security to each other. The United States is providing troops and resources. Romania is at the front line and protecting the border of Europe. So we're both working hard on that. But we're also doing business together, finding opportunities, be it in the energy sector and nuclear, be it in agriculture and IT, you name it. The partnership is broad, and that's a celebration of how well our two peoples and our two countries work together.
What are the chances for Romania to become a hub for this technology? It will be a political decision?
I think it's a business decision. I think the political decision has been made already. And I give full credit to the leadership of Romania, from the president and the governing coalition, for making a wise decision that by moving first, you create an opportunity to be a hub. Now, the United States is supporting that hub. And I just announced earlier this week that we were providing the resources to create a training simulator at the Polytechnica University here in Bucharest. That's a small contribution because we'll need people that are trained and educated to staff these new reactors. But the hub, the training hub, can be built off of this work that we're doing with Polytechnica, but also the business hub. So by being the first to develop and deploy this technology on a commercial operation in Europe, in tandem with the first deployment in the United States, Romania can become the hub for deployment. I heard today, and I'm quoting NewScale again because this is not my statistics, they believe that up to 75% of the components for their reactor system can be built in Romania by Romanian companies. So, okay, let's go back to your question about business. Yeah, it's business, but you know, if a reactor, I'm going to throw a number out there, and it's a made-up number, so don't quote it, but if, let's say a reactor costs, the big ones cost about $3 billion. If 75% of that business can go to Romanian companies, boy, I would be excited to be a hub. And so just when we're looking at the size of the market, the first number I look at is every single coal-fired power plant in Central Europe will need to be phased out in the next 12 to 15 years. That's about 37 plants. So that's 37 systems. If we use my 3 billion number, do the math. It's over $100 billion in business. And up to 75% of that can go to local companies. So that's a pretty good business. So I would be pretty excited if Romania can become that hub. And by being first, you have the first chance to be that hub.
Well, it sounds great, but let me, the guy from this debunking fake news show, will Germany and France and Great Britain trust Romania industry to build such plants which will operate in their countries? I mean, Germany is famous for technology, UK also.
So, you know, we have an international system of standards, an international system of certification of factories. You know, it's the ISO 9000 series. And so any plant can be certified to that standard. And I don't know the numbers here in Romania, but I would bet that most companies that are involved in any kind of international business, and that's everybody because you're an EU member state, and so a lot of your exports go to EU member states, it has to reach that international standard. And if they can achieve that standard, then of course they can be trusted.
We talk about Doicești just a little. It happened 8 years ago. We suspect Russian disinformation made possible all that. Do you think we, Romanian, and you, Americans, learned something from that experience?
I had an interesting conversation today with members of Parliament on this question of have we learned lessons about fake news? I think we have. And I think there are 3 lessons. And number 1 is that we cannot sit silent when fake news hits us. That is, we need to be ready to counter fake news with the real news. Number 2, it's incumbent on government officials, on industry officials, and on the media to shine sunlight onto fake news. That is, to call it into question, to name it for what it is, and make sure that the public has the full picture. Because ultimately, every individual citizen of Romania, every individual citizen of the United States has to make the judgment for themselves. We're democracies, we elect our leadership, and so we need to have good, accurate information. But the third piece is that our publics have to be ready to be skeptical, to ask hard questions. And when I say that, I mean you should ask me hard questions, you should ask industry hard questions, but more importantly, you should challenge the sources of fake news. Because as I said, they find a kernel of truth and then they twist it into a story. And so it's very important that we as information consumers challenge our sources and understand their agendas.
In 1981, President Reagan approved the first U.S. Exim Bank loan for Cernavoda Unit 1 project. It was a political decision. Now, it was a political also at the first stage. Now it's about business. But we know also that Bulgaria want this kind of technology and also to become a hub. Czech Republic also, Poland also, and some other states. So it will be just business or also a political decision if more states want to become a hub?
I think ultimately it will be a mixed decision. I think you're absolutely right. The decision by Romania's political leadership to seek this first opportunity and to push it forward was a political decision, and a wise one, because a political decision can turn into a business opportunity, as we've talked about. I think that other countries, having seen Romania's boldness, are ready to follow Romania's leadership into this business. And then, when that happens, we'll see Czech companies producing pumps that could compete with Romanian companies that produce pumps. And so then it's natural marketplace competition. Who makes the best product? Who gives the best price? And then we'll see natural competition. The interesting thing for me as a political operator, I'm not a politician, but I operate in the world of politics, is that the need for clean, carbon-free energy is tremendous. Now, 37 coal-fired plants just here in Central Europe need to be replaced. No one company can do that on its own. No one country can do that on its own. And so I see an opportunity, if you brand it, Central Europe, if you brand it the 3 Cs collection of countries, if you brand it the democratic world, so we can include North America, include Japan, South Korea, that coalition of countries, whatever brand or circle, however big we draw that circle, have an opportunity to leverage the moment when the world needs us to act on climate change, and the world needs us to act to create clean energy sources, to share in the wealth for all. And that's a huge opportunity because it's a self-reinforcing positive cycle. It's business, it's climate, it's drawing us together as like-minded countries who share a democratic philosophy, and then that feeds into itself and makes all of us better. I know this is a very philosophical answer to your very direct question, but I see it as an opportunity to bring us all together as like-minded countries into a coalition that can clean up our planet, do good business, and bring us all together.
Dependence on Russian oil and gas is one of Europe's biggest problems now. Finding alternative sources is a priority. What do you think are the solutions beside nuclear energy?
Mm-hmm. So we're working very hard on solutions to that. And I should start off by saying I've been working on this problem set for 21 of my 27 career years as a diplomat. In 2001, I started working on a project called the Baku-Tbilisi-Ceyhan oil pipeline, which was envisioned at the time when Russia was a partner more than a threat and not a war maker at the time, but envisioned at a time when there was abundant natural gas in the Caspian region, in Azerbaijan, in Kazakhstan, in Turkmenistan, and the infrastructure that was left over from the Soviet period all ran to Moscow and then from Moscow out into Europe. And so we saw an opportunity, because there was only one company controlling those pipelines, we saw a need for multiple companies. And that multiple sources of gas, multiple pipelines, and that would have assured energy security for Europe. And so, in fact, one of our ambassadors at the time created this slogan called, "Happiness is multiple pipelines." So that's been part of our strategy, if you will, not an anti-Russia strategy, but a pro-security, energy security strategy for over 20 years. And it started in the Bill Clinton administration, was carried over into the George Bush administration, George W. Bush, and has been part of the United States strategy across our administrations. So fast forward to today, we're finally seeing in the next month and a half one of the key pieces of that original gas pipeline connection from Azerbaijan, which is the Greece-Bulgaria interconnector, which I had the pleasure and honor to be there at the first shovel digging opportunity. That is finally going to come into service. And
finally, yes, indeed.
Finally.
Yes, indeed.
I'm so delighted that it's finally happening. And so there is some of the infrastructure, thanks to long-term investment, that is going to help Europe with its energy security needs. The United States is doing its part. We are maximizing our output of natural gas putting it into LNG form, and our companies are shipping it exclusively to Europe. And so the maximum amount of available gas and available export capacity is now being deployed to provide that gas to Europe.
But for countries like Hungary, Slovakia, or Germany, is that also the solution?
It's part of the solution, but replacing gas with gas is only going to get you so far. And so we need to think both short term, which is LNG from the United States, LNG from other source countries around the world, but then we need to be working very hard on the nuclear piece, which is more of a medium-term solution, of energy efficiency, of renewables. Everything needs to be in the mix now because we're in a crisis. We are in a war caused by Russia's attack on Ukraine. And we need to have a wartime mentality, which means we need to work together, we need to share, we need to cooperate, and we need to, as we say, have each other's back, because every country faces the same challenge, and we need to work together to solve it.
These kind of solutions are provided for a long time war or a short one?
I think we need to be very careful here. Nobody wants a long-term war. Nobody wants the Ukrainian people to suffer more than they already have. No one wants the innocent Russian soldiers who've been sent out to Ukraine to fight their brothers, literally, to suffer more. This is an unprovoked war caused by a regime in Moscow that has no consideration for the needs of its own people, let alone the people of its neighboring countries. So nobody wants this war to last. But we need to be ready for a long-term conflict. We need to provide and make the investments as an emergency program now to be ready to fight a long-term war. And let's all hope, touch wood, that it's not going to last long, but we need to be ready for it to last long.
Thank you very much, indeed.
Thank you.
Va fi proiectul despre care ne-a vorbit diplomatul american însoțit de dezinformare și știri false? În urmă cu 9 ani, explorarea gazelor de șist de la Pungești a generat proteste care au dus la abandonarea proiectului de către compania americană Chevron. Cât de mult a contat atunci dezinformarea? Tatiana Țarfulă ne explică.
– 14 octombrie 2013 este ziua care a pus comuna Pungești pe hartă. Un simplu click pe Google după numele Pungești și afli rapid evenimentele care au făcut-o faimoasă.
Sunteți român? Păi și nu vă ieși milă de oamenii ăștia?
Ei știu despre ce-i vorba.
Poftim?
Ei știu despre ce-i vorba.
Da, dar dumneavoastră știți despre ce-i vorba? Despre ce este vorba? Da, și anume? Cu tremure, apă otrăvită, ceva? Nu-i așa?
Cutremurele și apa otrăvită au fost principalele nenorociri care urmau să se abată asupra sătenilor din Pungești dacă Chevron ar fi săpat o sondă de explorare a gazelor de șist din zonă. Așa că în acea zi, aproximativ 150 de săteni, bărbați și femei, tineri, copii și bătrâni, au ieșit să protesteze împotriva exploatării gazelor de șist de către compania americană Chevron. Cei mai mulți din ignoranță pură, bazându-se pe ceea ce auziseră prin târg. Alții însă au amestecat în mod conștient emoția, jumătățile de adevăr și informațiile false pentru a induce teama în rândul sătenilor. Otrăvirea fântânilor, a culturilor și câteva cutremure au fost suficiente pentru a le stârni furia. Fracturarea hidraulică este o tehnologie pe care America o folosește pe scară largă de peste 60 de ani. Au fost fracturate peste 1 milion de foraje și nu a apărut nicăieri vreun scandal legat de fântâni otrăvite sau cutremure. În România, cei mai mulți nu auziseră și nu citiseră un singur cuvânt despre fracturarea hidraulică, dar s-au trezit peste noapte că sunt experți în a critica această tehnologie. De la profesori de română, matematică, critici literari, până la preoți.
Trageți clopotile! Trageți clopotile!
Toți știau ce presupune tehnologia, ce substanțe sunt folosite și cât sunt de dăunătoare. Cutremurele apar și ele. Și pentru a-și susține argumentația, este dat exemplul de la Galați.
Nu stați aici în zonă, cu tremurile nu vă afectează și dumneavoastră? Și atunci? N-ați văzut ce s-a întâmplat la Galați datorită furărilor, exploatărilor de șist?
Nu știți dumneavoastră că datorită furărilor, pentru că nu
Institutul de Seismologie. Nu știu dacă ați văzut interviul dat.
La Galați însă nu se exploatau gaze de șist, ci petrol, deci era vorba de o altă tehnologie. În zonă s-au produs în acea vreme câteva cutremure ușoare, dar fără nicio legătură cu forajele. Mircea Radulian, directorul științific al Institutului Național pentru Fizica Pământului, a explicat atunci că forajele se fac la adâncimi între 100 și 700 de metri, iar cutremurele s-au produs la 5 și 10 kilometri. În plus, exploatările în zonă datează de aproximativ 40 de ani și în toată această perioadă nu s-au înregistrat fenomene speciale. Sătenii, oameni de bună credință, au fost rapid manipulați. Cine vrea să-i fie otrăvită apa, recoltele sau animalele? Revoltele care au durat 5 luni de zile au escaladat rapid. De la scandări și drumuri blocate s-a ajuns în scurt timp la bătăi cu jandarmii. Comuna Pungești a fost declarată pentru câteva zile zonă specială de siguranță publică, fapt ce a presupus controlul strict al oamenilor și vehiculelor care tranzitau localitatea. Cele mai mari proteste de lângă sonda de explorare de la Pungești au avut loc pe 7 decembrie 2013. Localnicii au rupt atunci gardurile, s-au trântit pe jos în calea mașinilor și au aruncat cu pietre. În îmbrâncerile cu jandarmii, câțiva au avut nevoie de îngrijiri medicale. Revolta de la Pungești a izbucnit la câteva zile după ce compania americană Chevron a obținut autorizația de construire a primei sonde de explorare a gazelor de șist din România. În urma explorării s-ar fi obținut date care ar fi permis estimarea rezervelor de gaze de șist. În 2013, un raport al Administrației Americane pentru Informații în domeniul energiei a estimat resursele de gaze de șist ale României la 1444 de miliarde de metri cubi. Acestea ar fi asigurat, la nivelul consumului din anul 2013, nevoile interne ale țării pentru aproximativ 120 de ani, fără a mai fi nevoie de importuri din Rusia. Estimările făcute sunt doar aprecieri preliminare referitoare la conținutul potențial al unei structuri geologice. Acestea au un anumit grad de incertitudine. Pentru o estimare cât mai precisă a rezervelor de gaze de șist din acele roci, trebuie cunoscuți peste 20 de parametri. Aceștia nu se pot obține prin satelit. Este necesar să fie săpate sonde de explorare din care se vor preleva carote și abia după aceea o companie poate spune dacă există sau nu rezerve de gaze de șist. În 2013, compania americană Chevron ar fi cheltuit peste 10 milioane de dolari pentru un singur foraj menit să cerceteze realitatea geologică din comuna Pungești. Am fi aflat astfel dacă avem gaze de șist și, bineînțeles, în ce cantitate. E posibil ca în urma explorării să fi descoperit că rezervele nu sunt nici pe departe cele estimate, iar compania ar fi decis să se retragă, cum a făcut în Polonia un an mai târziu. Deși au fost săpate 64 de sonde de explorare și compania nu s-a confruntat cu revolte de tip Pungești la niciunul din foraje, realitatea geologică nu a fost favorabilă polonezilor. Privind retrospectiv la modul cum s-au desfășurat evenimentele de la Pungești, este greu să nu ne întrebăm oare cine a avut de câștigat. Răspunsul la această întrebare ne va lămuri și cine a fost în spatele manipulării de la acea vreme. Pentru că e greu de crezut că niște oameni simpli de la sat, preocupați de grija zilei de mâine, s-au trezit brusc cunoscători ai tehnologiei de fracturare hidraulică. Războiul dus de Rusia în Ucraina a determinat întreaga Europă să vadă un adevăr care ani de zile a fost ignorat: dependența energetică de Rusia. În loc să investească în cercetare pentru descoperirea unor soluții alternative la gazul rusesc, europenii au cumpărat gaz și au finanțat astfel întregul aparat de război și propaganda al Rusiei. Pentru că multe organizații ecologiste care s-au opus și se opun oricăror tehnologii de producere a energiei sunt finanțate direct sau indirect de Rusia, care își ascunde interesele financiare și politice, fluturând ideea nobilă a luptei împotriva poluării.
Tatiana Țarfulea. Urmează revista presei Fake, dezinformarea privind legea offshore a exploatării zăcămintelor din Marea Neagră, criza alimentară ca armă a propagandei ruse și teoriile conspirației privind masacrul din Texas sunt subiectele documentate de Horia Grușcă.
Invadarea Ucrainei, urmată de sancțiunile occidentale aplicate Rusiei și scumpirea gazelor naturale, au determinat mai multe state să-și reconsidere politicile energetice. În 18 mai, Parlamentul României a modificat legea offshore pentru a impulsiona investitorii să exploateze hidrocarburile din Marea Neagră. În aceeași zi, deputata Alianței pentru Unitatea Românilor, Gianina Șerban, a postat pe pagina sa de Facebook o critică vehementă a noilor prevederi, acuzând coaliția de guvernare că lasă exploatarea gazelor naturale în mâna companiilor străine, care nu vor mai avea obligația de a furniza o parte din producție României. Jurnaliștii de la factual.ro au verificat textul de lege și au constatat că statul român va primi în continuare redevențe, dar și cote de impozitare de până la 70% în funcție de veniturile suplimentare obținute. Potrivit unui studiu Deloitte, veniturile suplimentare la buget vor însuma 26 de miliarde de dolari până în 2040. E adevărat, față de varianta din 2018, legea nu mai obligă companiile să tranzacționeze jumătate din cantitatea de gaze extrase în baza reglementărilor impuse de ANRE. În schimb, un articol nou introdus dă Ministerului Energiei posibilitatea să impună restricții temporare de preț și vânzare pentru cantitățile necesare asigurării consumului casnic și energiei termice pentru populație. Altfel spus, contrar postării parlamentarei AUR, statul român poate impune celor care exploatează să-i vândă gazele cu prioritate. La fel de lipsită de temei este și insinuarea deputatei Gianina Șerban că exploatarea gazelor naturale din Marea Neagră poate fi făcută doar de companii străine. După ce a preluat partea americanilor de la Exxon, compania Romgaz deține jumătate din concesiunea Neptun Deep, cel mai mare depozit de gaze naturale cu o estimare de 84 de miliarde de metri cubi. În plus, Romgaz are și 12% din depozitul Trident, al doilea ca mărime, cu 30 de miliarde de metri cubi. Un alt efect colateral al războiului pornit de Rusia împotriva Ucrainei este riscul unei crize alimentare globale, semnalat ca atare de către Programul Alimentar Mondial al Națiunilor Unite. Cunoscută ca grânarul Europei, Ucraina este un exportator agricol major în toată lumea. În încercarea de a-i supune pe ucraineni, Rusia a vizat nu doar marile orașe, ci și silozurile de cereale, recoltele de pe câmp și utilajele agricole. Invadatorii au distrus sau au furat în bună parte capacitățile de procesare și transport și, cel mai grav, au blocat exporturile de grâne ucrainene prin porturile de la Marea Neagră. Dacă acțiunile armatei ruse destabilizează piața alimentară globală, propaganda Kremlinului speculează tensiunile inerente, sperând să șubrezească sprijinul internațional de care se bucură Kievul. Vectorii dezinformării încearcă să convingă publicul că adevărata cauza exploziei prețurilor la alimente și combustibil nu este războiul, ci sancțiunile occidentale aplicate Moscovei. Aceste teorii circulă în mai multe limbi, nu doar în Europa, fiind preluate și amplificate global de presa chineză. În realitate, sancțiunile internaționale impuse Rusiei vizează subminarea capacității Kremlinului de a-și finanța agresiunea armată, adevărata cauza a crizei, și nu domeniul agricol. De altfel, sancțiunile occidentale prevăd explicit excepții pentru exporturile de natură alimentară. Unul dintre cele mai perverse mesaje promovate inclusiv la nivel diplomatic de către ruși este că, prin exporturile de produse agricole, Ucraina ar achita de fapt armele oferite ca ajutor de țările occidentale. Însuși președintele Dumei de Stat afirma recent că, deși susține că ajută Kievul, Washingtonul plănuiește instaurarea foametei în Ucraina. Alte dezinformări pretind că ucrainenii și nu rușii sunt cei care blochează navele cu grâne în propriile porturi. Vorbitorilor de limbă rusă le sunt destinate mesaje înșelătoare adaptate. După ce ani în șir au negat existența Holodomorului, foametea soldată cu 10 de milioane de victime programată de Stalin în anii 30 pentru a distruge pătura țărănească ucraineană, presa pro-Kremlin prezintă acum blocada porturilor de către armata rusă ca având un scop nobil, anume protejarea ucrainenilor de un nou holodomor, pus la cale de autoritățile de la Kiev. Să pornești un război care generează o criză alimentară mondială și să-ți arogi apoi merite de salvator, depășește tiparele literaturii lui Orwell, remarcă analiștii de la EU versus Disinfo. Tragedia de la școala elementară din Uvalde, Texas, unde un american de 18 ani a ucis cu focuri de armă 19 elevi și 2 profesori, fiind la rândul lui ucis de polițiști, a dat naștere unui val de dezinformări în mediul online legate de autorul crimelor. Falsurile distribuite pe Twitter și Reddit reiau temele consacrate ale conspiraționiștilor QAnon. Salvador Ramos ar fi fost un imigrant ilegal în Statele Unite, era transgender, iar masacrul ar fi fost de fapt o înscenare. Mulți utilizatori s-au grăbit să pună incidentul, al doilea ca gravitate petrecut vreodată într-o școală americană, pe seama guvernării Joe Biden, susținând fără temei că în mandatul lui Donald Trump s-ar fi înregistrat mai puține crime cu arme de foc. Expertul în dezinformare consultat de Associated Press consideră că acest gen de reacții reflectă probleme majore precum rasismul și intoleranța, iar tactica folosită are ca scop evitarea punerii în discuție a violenței armate și a controlului armelor.
Horia Grușcă. La final, o cuvenită rectificare. Președintele american Ronald Reagan a semnat împrumutul pentru prima unitate de la Cernavodă în 1981, desigur, nu în 1991. Atât pentru astăzi. Până miercurea viitoare, cu bine!